Welcome everyone to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha and welcome to Los Angeles, where we are shooting on the ground at Adobe MAX for a very special edition of the show. We have got conversations lined up for you with executives at Adobe talking about GenStudio. We're talking about Firefly and Firefly Foundry. We've also got some folks from Omnicom coming on the show to talk about how the era of AI is affecting advertising. It is a jam-packed show, and so without further ado, let's get right on into it. I am here with Rachel Thornton, the Chief Marketing Officer of Adobe Enterprise. Thank you so much for having us, Rachel. Rachel, we appreciate it.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, Akash.
So before we get into the strategy of Adobe Enterprise, just tell us about this event. I mean, why is this event so important to Adobe?
This is the biggest event for the creative community. It is the preeminent event for the creative community. There are 10,000 people here with us today learning about all things Adobe and creativity and AI.
So I want to dive into each of those topics because there's so much there. You know, you have an interesting role as Chief Marketing Officer because you spend your time at Adobe effectively talking to a lot of other
marketers,
chief marketing officers. Yes. And so that gives you like this very ultimate point of view on what chief marketing officers are thinking about worldwide. So what is on the minds right now of CMOs? Tell us.
I think the big areas that, CMOs are talking about or wanting to dive deep on and get ahead of are disruptions in areas like SEO to LLMs. So how people are, increasingly searching for information on LLMs, things like ChatGPT, things like Perplexity. I think there's this amazing promise of personalization at scale. And in fact, now more than ever, it's a reality, but it means you have to have so much more content so you can really bring personalized experience to life. So CMOs thinking about how much content do they need? How do they scale that content? And then I think also as interfaces change and you get much more conversational AI, like what does that mean for their experiences and how they deliver those experiences to customers?
What about CMOs getting access to the tools that they want? Because one of the things that we talk about on our show is how expensive AI is, and paying for this software is expensive. And, chief marketing officers, I have to imagine they're like, look, we want to spend, and is there a part of it that is like, it's never been more expensive to spend on some of these tools? How does that work for them?
I think it's actually, there's a lot of interest in AI. There's been obviously a lot of experimentation with AI. Like a lot of the CMOs I talk with, they've done a lot of experiments. Now they're looking to understand how they can scale it. And I think doing that effectively, in order to make sure that the investments you're making in AI are really going to deliver the ROI you're looking for, it comes down to, do you have a really strong data foundation? More and more when I talk to CMOs, they now look at their really close collaborator in the enterprise, their CIO. Like how do they work with the CIO to understand what's the data we have on customers? How can we build a solid data foundation to make sure that all of the investments we make in AI, as we scale AI solutions, they pay off because they have and they're built on that strong data foundation. So that collaboration has really become top of mind for CMOs.
And then I imagine that the CFO also gets involved in any conversation that the CMO is having with the CIO. So, okay, so you talked about SEOs, as the SEO game changing. Into LLMs, and I'm sure there are other three-letter acronyms that we should be talking about. But talk to me about how Adobe is addressing that issue and the issues that you described, because these are big questions that customers are facing.
They absolutely are. And I think what's great about the work we're doing at Adobe is we have such great conversations with CMOs. But to your point, we're also kind of our own test bed. So we use, like my team, we use all of our own products. We call it Adobe on Adobe. But we're always looking at when CMOs say, hey, help me navigate this SEO to LLM optimizer conversation. We're like, great. And hearing that feedback has helped us with products. So for example, we recently went GA with Adobe's LLM Optimizer, which is a product solely designed to help marketers make that shift, to help them understand how they can show up better when someone's searching in an LLM for their service or their product.
And so Optimizer is basically, we hear of these tools time and time again. It's where you can sort of use these marketing tools to show up better.
Show up better. So,
in these chatbot results.
Exactly.
Do you think about, the startups that are playing in that space? I mean, this is a very competitive space. I mean, how do you think about competition in a feature like that, for example?
I think when you're really close to your customers and when like Adobe has an amazing customer breadth, I'm sure if you walk around here today, you're going to see some amazing customers. If you watch the keynote that happened, it's just amazing customers that are with us. So, folks like Coca-Cola, Newell Brands is here, Estee Lauder, all of these amazing companies. And so as we work with them, we're really able to understand, what are they seeing? What do they want to do for their customers? How do they want to provide great customer experience? But also that rich data of, we've helped build their MarTech infrastructure. So we're really in a great position to help them leverage kind of all of the investment and the understanding they have in partnership with us to help them show up like an LLMs. And I think that is a powerful competitive advantage.
So that's the competitive advantage against the startups. What about the ad tech for as dynamic a space as ad tech and advertising is? We've written stories with the information about Salesforce, about Amazon, about Microsoft. I mean, big tech companies are charging full steam ahead into the space. How do you think about competition there against those big giants?
What is amazing about Adobe and the reason why, I love the company, I love the job, I love all the innovation is that Adobe uniquely can bring together creativity, marketing, and AI. And no one else can do that. I mean, just look around here and see all of the innovation that's happening in the creative space. But then that intersection with bringing that creativity to life, personalizing it and scaling it for your customers and using AI to just be able to move faster, to innovate faster, that's powerful. And there's no other company that can do that.
It's funny, when I have thought about Adobe, and I think a lot of other people too, we don't think too much about marketing software right off the bat. We think more of the creative tools. And we're going to have conversations later today with your colleagues about GenStudio and about the Foundry offerings that the company is coming to life with. But is this part of a broader shift for Adobe diving deeper into MarTech, marketing software? Can we expect the enterprise segment of the business to really be the future of the company?
I think if you look at Adobe's history in this space, it's a pretty strong history. If you think about Adobe Analytics, if you think about email, Marketo, if you think about Campaign Optimizer, so much of what marketers do when they look at data, when they analyze what their customers are doing, and then they build campaigns around them, so much of it is built on Adobe's foundation. So I think that telling that story and being loud and proud with that story is the great opportunity. And I think the way that I think about, hey, how do we talk about creativity? We do a very similar event to this in April in Las Vegas.
Where is that?
Adobe
Vegas?
Summit.
Okay.
So I definitely think Adobe has a strong and a rich history here. And now just how do we make sure that we're bringing it to life and we're telling that story and we're loud and proud about it.
And so with that enterprise story, talk to me about how that shows up in the financial results, because people might look at the results, they might say, okay, I sort of think of the digital experience segment as the enterprise segment. That's not growing as fast as the digital media segment, which is sort of what we think about as the consumer segment. So how does that come through in the financial results then? I
think the thing that's been really exciting is when we look at our AI first products. So like when you think about GenStudio, this has been a huge growth driver, 25% year-on-year growth, because it's really speaking to the needs of marketers. So I mentioned the need for content and personalization at scale. So more and more marketers are thinking about how are they building the right content supply chain to really make personalization at scale a reality for their business. And it comes down to how are they using Adobe GenStudio. And that's the great growth we've seen.
We had Vinod Khosla on the show last week. And one of the things that he mentioned was, I asked him the question, what is the hurdle right now to enterprises really embracing AI? And he made the comment that they don't have the right people on the ground to work with the tools right now. And I was struck by those comments because more and more we see companies that are sending their people into enterprises and saying, hey, look, you might not have the right talent. take our people. And that's kind of what you're doing today with Foundry. Do you see that happen? Do you see enterprises sort of struggling with, hey, the software isn't enough. We don't have the right talent. Is that something you're seeing with the customers that you work with?
I think that it's, for a lot of companies, looking not just at your talent, but really looking at where can you encourage as a leader, like how you encourage experimentation with AI, how are you getting people AI literate, how are you really encouraging people to learn more, to embrace it. I think a lot of the conversations that I've been having with CMOs around reskilling or upskilling, I think would be a better term. Like for a lot of CMOs, they're looking at their teams and they're like, okay, how do we help people learn more, apply their skills, take AI into their jobs and not feel like, I don't know how to use this, so I don't know what to do. It's interesting what Varun said, but I still do think there's a huge opportunity for people just to get comfortable with experimentation.
Themselves.
Yes, get excited about learning and, get skilled and get trained on this. I think that is a huge opportunity.
I want to ask you this because you're a marketer and so much of marketing is messaging. And, so much has been said about AI, and yet I still think there are probably some misconceptions about how to work with AI, what AI can do. What do you think the biggest misconception is around AI right now with respect to how enterprises can or should be using it?
I think it's the thinking about replacement, thinking of it as replacement rather than augmentation. And I think of it as amplification and augmentation, right? I think that when I watch my teams and we're working through a problem and we are thinking about, okay, how are we doing our research? How are we figuring this out? But also, how are we then using it to scale our creativity or scale our campaigns? I think that's powerful. If I think about the agents that we have, for a good example, what's our site optimization agent that we use? And we use that all the time. Our audience agents, how can we just be better, move faster, and kind of amplify the impact of the team? That's what I think is powerful about AI.
Great. Well, Rachel, thank you for having us. We appreciate it. And we'll see more of you later on. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I am here with Varun Parmar, the GM for Adobe GenStudio and Firefly Enterprise. Varun, it's great to have you here.
Nice to be here, Akash. Yeah.
So tell us about what GenStudio actually is.
Yeah. So every brand and agency has a content supply chain. That content supply chain has multiple sort of steps in the process. You start off with the creative brief, then you go into creation and production, then you go and activate that content, and then you look at the insights of what's working versus not to feed it back into the content, right? And at the heart of this is asset management. That's your digital asset management repository. So GenStudio is Adobe's solution to the content supply chain for every single brand and agency.
So this is a software that companies can use to basically end-to-end create a marketing campaign, an advertising campaign, whether it's creating the assets and then also distributing them to all of these social media platforms, stuff like that.
Exactly. It brings the best together in terms of the marketing workflows along with the creative workflows into a single unified solution that is now turbocharged with a lot of AI innovation.
And so I want to focus on both sides of this. One is the content creation, and then one is kind of the content distribution for marketers. On the creation side, you guys have been announcing a lot of stuff this week, and we're going to talk about that. But I'm actually very interested in the distribution side. Tell us about some of the ad integration products and services that you're launching this week.
Yeah, so we have Adobe GenStudio for performance marketing, where a performance marketer can self-serve themselves in terms of activation and then looking at the insights of what's working across all of these channels. So what the product or the solution allows you to do is essentially one click, take all of the content that you've produced and then activate it omni-channel across different ad networks.
And when you say activate, what does activate mean for us, for who aren't marketers by trade?
Exactly. So once you have this content, you need to create like an ad unit, and then you need to actually take that content, load it into whatever the platform is, be it Meta, be it Google, TikTok, LinkedIn, so on and so forth. So all of these are different platforms. So instead of going and uploading all of that content into the platform, you can use Adobe GenStudio to one-click take all of the content that was produced in the solution and then, publish it over to this platform.
Right.
So that you can then do all of the things around like how much money you want to spend on this campaign and then actually serve it to your audiences.
And was this something that customers said that they wanted from you? Why create this new integration?
So one of the big pain points in this activation on publishing flow is that there's this thing called tracking ID, which is essentially looking at a campaign and saying, hey, there's a set of content I'm going to use for a certain audience. So there's this really long sort of name of the campaign that's actually put together. That is the way you actually track the performance of the campaign. So usually what you have is a bunch of these marketers have these spreadsheets that they maintain. These are hundreds and hundreds of rows that they create in order to track every single variant of this asset that was produced against the campaign that you're running and the amount of money that you're spending and the audience that's there. With Adobe GenStudio, we are fully automating this end-to-end, this entire process of creating the tracking ID. So never ever you'll actually run into the process of where you see some of these errors in terms of either activation or reporting back. So streamlining that actually has a huge benefit for these performance marketers. And you can think about, they have hundreds of campaigns running at a given time across multiple products, and there's a lot of spend associated with that. So small errors in this workflow can actually mean big impact.
I want to talk a little bit about the business that Adobe is known for, which is the front half of that story, which is the content creation side of it. And we were just talking earlier, I mean, you are a boomerang to Adobe. You came back to the company after 15 years. All of these AI tools that are getting created to help people generate all this content, I wonder how you think about that as a product person, building that in a way that doesn't cannibalize the business that Adobe has built its foundation on, because a lot of people, use all these tools, Premiere, Photoshop, to edit and create stuff by hand. It's a very it's a carefully curated process. Now we can do it all with AI. And so how do you think about that issue from a product design perspective?
Yeah, so I think there are two things I would say. Like, one is that you have to be deeply embedded into the workflow that an organization has, right? So if you think about a typical marketing campaign, the number of steps that are involved in terms of looking at the creative brief. In the creative brief, it talks about the audience that you're going after, right? There's certain messages that are going to resonate. There's certain creatives that are going to resonate, right? And there's an entire orchestration of workflow that happens. So while it's really, really easy to just create an image or a video that's 15 or 30-second long, it is still very hard to actually create something that's actually going to perform, is going to give you the ROI, is going to actually resonate with your customers so that they click on that button and that's going to actually drive some, conversions for you. So, from Adobe's perspective, we have, AI models that we've created. You're going to hear about a lot of exciting news in terms of the third-party model integration and stuff. But what's really critical is that for a large brand or an agency to really realize value, all of that innovation has to be fully integrated into the workflow that these marketers and creatives have. And that's the unique sort of perspective that we bring in,
You talked about some of the other models that Adobe is now moving to work with. I wonder, from your perspective, we have all these different models. I wonder if maybe they're all going to converge at some point, because right now it feels like, well, this model is good for audio, this model is good for video, this model is good for this type of video. Are they all going to converge in the long run, do you think? Or are we going to be in a world where we have to sort of live in this marketplace of 12, 13 different models and pick and choose?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I do quite often is like look at the history and see, is that a predictor of what's going to happen in the future? And Adobe has been a creative company for, well over 40 years. And we have products, that actually span all of the modalities. So what we've seen is that the persona for these products are very different. So we have Adobe Illustrator, which is a product for vector graphics. We have Adobe Photoshop, which is the best tool for imaging. We have Premiere Pro, which is for video. So our point of view is that there is no one model that's going to rule it all, that we will continue to see like models specialize in specific areas, focused on specific use cases and workflow integrations.
And last question for you, going back to your point here on ROI, right? Because I love this idea that it's not enough just to create the content, you have to be able to measure it. How good are these tools right now? I mean, can you just develop the video, or does it still take as much time to edit the video, to edit the campaign, to find ways to measure the ROI? I mean, what can't the AI do right now for us?
Yeah, so I think there's obviously the notion of like, what does the brand stand for? And any piece of content, does it actually meet the brand guidelines, right? So that's one aspect of it. I think the other aspect of it is that, in terms of looking at the performance of what's really working in that ad unit, you need to actually do some really deep analysis of what are the attributes in that image, what are the attributes in that video frame, what is it in terms of the music genre that actually worked, to really understand that for that given spend and the audience that you're going after, what are the things, the attributes that actually are working, and then feed that back into the model so it understands, what are these characteristics. So I would say there's still a whole lot of work that actually goes in to actually understand piece of the content, the activation channel, the performance insights, the audience characteristic that actually then needs to be, fed back into the model.
Great. Well, Varun, I know you got a busy week, so we'll let you get back to it.
Thank
you
you
very
so
much for being
Yeah,
here. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I am here with Hannah Elsakr, VP of Generative AI New Business Ventures. Hannah, it's great to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Akash.
So let's talk about Adobe Firefly. For those of us who know Firefly just as the model, it's actually much bigger than that. Tell us what Firefly is, and tell us about what Firefly Foundry is, the new initiative that is being announced this week.
Thank you. So Firefly began as models, as a family of models that were commercially safe because we care so much. You're here at Max with us. We care so much about the creative community. So lots of modalities, vector, audio, image, video, all tuned safely because we have license to every piece of data that goes into that model. So that's where we started. What we learned from the customers was that the models are not the end game. They're doing serious creative work in our tooling, and Firefly needed to adapt to do that as well. So we now consider Firefly also an app, a web app, and on mobile phone, where you can do lots of creative tasks, whether you're doing text to video or images to video, you can really kind of take it to go all the way from the model on. You also asked me about
Foundry.
Foundry, the big news, Adobe Firefly Foundry. This is such an incredible addition to the Enterprise suite. It's actually, the origin story is that customers asked us to go there. We have customization already. The original models obviously don't know IP. We consider that a feature, not a bug. Then we introduced custom models last year, which is a self-serve, lighter tuning, single concept model. And now the customer said, that's not enough. We need world building. I need you to understand all my brand, all my guidelines, my characters, my mascots, creative styles. And that really requires deep tuning. And so Adobe Firefly Foundry is a deep tuning service. Along with it, we surgically reopen our base models, which
Basically, to customize these models.
Exactly.
So to whatever the customer wants.
They're commercially safe to start with. Then we take the customer's IP. We run the GPUs with really smart PhDs working on it, reweighting and overfitting. And then we close it up, and that becomes a private model to the enterprise. So that's really an entire world that is understood that's concerning your brand.
So this is Adobe sending in these forward deployed engineers we've heard so much about in the land of AI.
Yeah.
This is Adobe sending in their team to say, hey, we've heard you need help. Take our people. We'll teach you how to use AI on the ground and actually make use of all the products that we're giving you.
Yeah, the way I would think about it is these are forward deployed PhDs, right? These are not just full stack engineers. We have a whole team. Our purpose is around creativity and marketing. And so we also have workflow experts, creativity workflow experts. And that's what the customers really appreciate. Models unto themselves are helpful, but if they're not in a workflow where I'm doing serious work, it's still friction-full. So our job is to make that frictionless.
So that added service where Adobe is sending in this team of PhDs, like you said, is the customer fronting the cost, or is Adobe fronting the cost for that?
We consider these very much a partnership with the customer, and it is a different model. So you're probably used to our seats-based model. Here it's really use case-based. So we go in, we try to discover what are the customer's biggest problems that might involve complex media. We think about the use cases, and then we band around that to deliver that service to them. So it's really a joint partnership that works with them. Of course, it's their IP that they're bringing to us and that we're tagging as well. So we work together on that.
And is the idea that eventually the customer might not need people from Adobe to help them run these tools? I mean, is the idea here that you kind of teach them how to use these tools and then you kind of walk away and then the customer has the knowledge that that they need?
Yeah, so there's two levels to this. We talked at the beginning about models, and then we talked about tooling and workflow. At the model level, I'm customers have told me they're not going to hire 200, 300 PhDs to tune models for them. So that's a very unique skill that we bring to them. What we're doing at the end, once the model is high quality, is we pipe it wherever they want into their workflows. That's where the creatives and the marketers live. At that point, it becomes ubiquitous to what they do, whether they're sitting in Photoshop or GenStudio or Illustrator, any of the tooling where they would do a marketing campaign, an ad campaign, and a piece of original content. At that point, it becomes a model just like any other model that you can access from Adobe. Most brands, though, do have continuous needs because they have, hundreds of brands in their portfolios, lots of countries they're serving, new campaigns that come out every week. In media and entertainment, you could have different franchises, different characters, story arcs. We're all voracious watchers of video these days, 12 plus hours. And so we need lots of fresh content 3 or 4 times a week. So there's a continuous need and innovation around that.
You talked a little bit about pricing, and I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. So is Adobe moving from sort of that seats-based model to more usage-based pricing that we've heard so many AI companies talk a lot about?
I think we're complementing the needs. And so our current models obviously are subscription-based. You and I could each have individual subscriptions for that work, but there is a use case-based need where maybe as an enterprise specifically, you would train that once. So if you have brand X in your portfolio or sub-brand X, you could probably train that once as the enterprise and then make it available to everyone in the enterprise who needed it.
So just before we let you go, I do want to ask one last question here, because we're talking about all these models, and I've always wondered the economics of a company like Adobe giving access to a company like, Runway's model, Luma's model, all these different models. I mean, what do those deals look like, and who's paying who? Give us a sense for that.
Chris is a great friend, Amit is a great friend at Luma, and these companies recognize that where the serious creative work and marketing work is done is in Adobe tools. And so we've had a lot of dialogue about how this is a beneficial thing for both of us and letting them get inside of the tools more natively so that there's less friction, again, to serve the customer and give them choice.
Great. Well, Hannah, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
I am here with Grant Owens, Chief Strategy Officer at Critical Mass. Grant, thanks for being here with us. Appreciate
My pleasure.
it.
Thanks for having me.
So I'm excited to talk all about advertising in the current era. What a moment it is for this practice that is decades old now. Talk to me about how AI is changing advertising at a high level, and then we'll go into some of the specific ways in which you're using it.
Sure. I mean, it's changing society on the whole. So how's it not changing advertising, right? It's changing culture, and advertising is based on culture. So it's having profound impacts, but I see it as an opportunity for sort of creative explosion. I've said to my team a lot that AI doesn't have sort of a narrow field of view. It's got a very wide field of view. It's got no recency bias. It can go back into history, into depth, and can give you more places and spaces to start. So for us, it's been a really sort of profound moment to recognize new opportunities that we couldn't have recognized before.
How are you guys using it at Critical Mass?
In all kinds of ways, in tactical ways and strategic ways and production ways, as you might imagine. We're doing campaigns at scale that we haven't been able to do before off the back of AI technology-driven technology. We're using it as a strategist. We're using it for insight gathering. We're using it to get to ideas faster. We're using it to expand our sort of canvas on which we can paint. So we're using it throughout the organization. It really does feel like it's starting to get embedded into the way we do things.
And so tell me, I just want to get into the meat of the matter here, because advertising it's such a dynamic space. People say that AI is coming for advertising. People say, well, it might be able to do the agency's job in some respects. What do you say to that?
I think it'll show up in many shapes and forms in the next, 4 or 5, 10 years even. I think there is a place and space for the sort of creativity that comes from our team. We value creative at the highest level, and I think we're going to continue to do that and use AI in the proper ways. I think you've heard a lot of people say that AI is a sidekick or a collaborator. And that's well and good, and I think we'll do some of that. But the real power from AI, I think, will come when you really embed it in the way your processes. That's not about taking the human's role out of it. It's just making sure that it's integral to the way that you work. It's not just an efficiency play. It's unlocking new opportunities. Is it coming for advertising? Absolutely, but in good ways too.
And what about your clients? You know, how are they thinking about advertising it more from the efficiency perspective that, you know, I used to rely on advertising as a way to reach my customers. Now I've got these chatbots that are changing the game of advertising altogether. We've written a lot about this at The Information, you know, people seeing their search traffic having declined. And one of the stories that we wrote actually is that while search traffic has declined, revenue hasn't yet declined, but some of these companies are worried because they're not sure how they're going to get new business. How are your clients thinking about that?
It's a great point, and it's changing. You know, we just saw OpenAI signing a deal with Shopify, and so the customer journey is changing extremely quickly. What we're trying to do in our team is really study those behaviors, understand where people are heading to make sure we keep our clients in front of those journeys in the right places. We talk a lot about discoverability, making sure that our clients' brands are able to be discovered, and the techniques that we use to do that, to get those stories in place at the right moments, obviously they're changing as fast as I've ever seen them in my 25 years of advertising.
And so on discoverability, what is the advice that you're giving clients?
Put content in different places that maybe you wouldn't have before. Invest in different places. We see not only are people doing commerce engagement in Pinterest and Reddit in other spaces, but also the AI engines are obviously training on those spaces. So we're encouraging clients to be in the right spaces, put the right content in place. It's challenging their ability to publish in all those different spots and touch points. But again, with the technology we have at our disposal and how we've made that integral to our workflow, we're able to produce content at a faster rate as well.
Right. I also want to talk to you about some of the economics of AI here, because it's expensive, right? And anybody that uses it knows that it's not cheap right now. With the tools that you're using right now at Critical Mass and at Omnicom, can you talk a little bit about the ROI that you've seen for your own business in using these tools from Adobe or any other company, really, for that matter?
Sure. I mean, a lot of the work that you don't see out front, but we're doing in the background, is putting the tools again in our main process, the way that we work. So we've used tools from Adobe, we've used some point solutions, but the job for us to get the most ROI, and why partners like Adobe are so valuable to us, is that it's really tailoring that workflow to the way that we work, not just a point solution for any one tactic we need to do. So we're doing a lot of work getting that integrated into the way that we work, making sure that it's able to be sort of human-aided, but it's something that's really producing efficiency and producing content in a way that maybe we couldn't have before.
And before I let you go, I do want to talk to you about this sort of new golden age of advertising that people are sort of waiting for with chatbots. I mean, we've had startups on our show, startups that say that, hey, we can help your company, your brand show up better in chatbot results. And that obviously puts aside the whole sponsored results offering that some of these chatbot companies are playing with. What do you think of that industry, and is that an opportunity that you see coming around that say, yeah, I mean, we're going to help people show up better in chatbot listings?
Maybe. I don't know if I've ever had an experience with a chatbot that I would call the golden age of advertising. I do think there's value there, but what we value more than anything is that emotional connection to a brand. And if that can come from a chatbot, okay, so be it. But storytelling is key to what we do. And it will always be key. And a lot of times that's not going to happen in a chatbot. For us, it's going to happen in a lot of different touch points. And that's what our creative teams are so, adept at doing, is creating those story moments for our clients' brands to really get their story out there.
What about helping companies show up better in, optimize their websites or, read the algorithms better? I mean, I don't know how you do it, but sure. I know that there are companies that say, look, if you put this copy on your website, or you put out a video in this way, OpenAI might catch it better, something like
100%. I mean, we were just seeing, Adobe just announced their own large language model optimizer to do just that. And so there are a lot of techniques and tools you could put in place to make sure you get that content properly adjusted to be found. And again, it's about discoverability. Once you are discovered, though, we feel that beyond that, there's a lot of storytelling that can happen. It doesn't need to be in a linear chatbot interface. It could be done in dozens of ways. So. But yeah, discoverability is huge in our industry, and we're trying to make sure our clients are ahead of that. And again, they're producing the right type of content
How
to
big a
do so.
revenue stream do you think advertising is for a company like OpenAI 5 years from now?
Oh, I mean, look at the deal they signed with Shopify. Imagine the amount of transactions that could happen in a space like that. But we're still seeing the nascent nature of the technology where it's guiding people down the wrong path, and there's some fumbles that'll happen on that transactional side. But if advertisers find that those transactions match with the journey that consumers want to have, there's plenty of revenue to be had in those spaces. I have no question about that.
Great. Well, Grant, thanks for joining us. Really
Awesome.
appreciate the time.
Thanks a lot, Akash. Cheers.
I am here with Val Carlson, Chief Creative Officer at Critical Mass. Val, it's so good to have you here.
Nice to meet you.
So I'm excited to talk about the creative process and how it is changing in the era of AI. We just had your colleague on that was sharing with us some of the ways that he sees the strategy of advertising changing. What AI tools is your team using right now in your creative process, and what job is it doing for you?
Oh, it's a great question. I mean, it's evolved so much over the last couple of years, but right now we're using Adobe Firefly. We are using Frame.io for film. We obviously use the Adobe Creative Suite. But it's been so interesting to see the tools evolve and to see us pull them all together. I think that's what's been amazing about this evolution is you can go straight from something that was a thought or a concept into something that's a generative piece of art. So you can get people excited about it. Then you can go straight to camera and you can edit in like 2 seconds. Like the whole pipeline has changed. It's absolutely amazing.
Now, I have to ask you, is it saving you time? Because a lot of people will say, hey, it can generate the first draft, and that applies to generative media as well.
Yeah.
But we have to do just as much work to edit the first draft as we did if we just came up with a better one in the first place. Is it actually saving you time?
No, it's not. I mean, honestly, the secret is a couple different things, right? You still want to go through the full creative process and you want to make sure that you're doing something that is not derivative. We love the word generative. That makes so much sense to us because it's a process. And I think that what's happening is amazing because if you're doing it correctly and you're talking to your clients along the way, you're innovating. You're not just creating something, you're making things bigger, better, more exciting, and you're touching more channels. So I think no, and I also think that there are some perceptions about how long it takes to do things in AI that are very untrue. I mean, certain parts of the process, you have to be very careful that you're not recreating something that's already been created, and that takes time. So there's human in the loop. I know people say this a lot. It's a reality, 100%.
One of the questions I wanted to ask you is we've heard now Adobe this week is launching a product. It's sort of like the forward deployed engineer for customers. And the idea is that they send in their brightest minds to sort of help customers use the AI better.
Yes.
And it kind of relates back to a topic we've been talking to a lot on this show, which is that companies don't have the right people on the ground to use AI. They can buy the software, but they don't have the right talent, essentially. How do you see that coming up with your clients? I mean, are they coming to you saying, hey, we want to use AI, but we don't have the right people, so you must be the expert. You use it for us. Are they mandating that we want to see your AI version and also your human version alongside each other?
There's so many questions in there. First, I want to comment on what you said about Adobe, because I think it's a beautiful model. So what they're doing with Firefly Foundry is pretty incredible, offering that sort of support to let people know how the process works and giving attribution to artists and giving support, I think is the key to everything in regards to working in AI. I think it's really important. Your second question about clients and their perceptions and what they ask for is multi-layered. We do have clients that say to us, I want you to use AI because I want it to be cheaper. And then we come back and we talk to them and educate them and say, okay, here is your brief, and here are the types of things that we need to do. And it may not be cheaper, but it will be better, and this is why. Or they will ask for what you said earlier, like expertise, right? So we could bring a specialist into an internal team, and we love to do that. We're very comfortable partnering with our clients in that way.
Now, you talked about using Adobe's products.
Yeah.
There are also a multitude of startups that are offering a number of similar products as well.
Sure.
Do you prefer to go with bigger enterprises products, or are startup solutions they're nimble, they're fast. Sometimes they are the point solution. They don't have, you don't have to buy the whole suite.
Right.
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 Do you prefer in some cases to use startups' AI tools?
I think it's good for everyone to know what they are and how they work. So what I do, I encourage my people to, at home, use whatever they want to use and play and try to understand what that looks like. But to be totally honest, we don't use a lot of those little startup tools because there isn't a lot of rigor behind them. And we have to be very careful.
Rigor meaning what? About
attribution for generative art. Like, I really love that Adobe, for instance, has what they call a nutrition label on their AI-generated products. Like being able to look at an image and understand exactly where it came from and being an artist and being able to opt out, I think that's a beautiful thing. So from a legal perspective, there are things that we just don't do for our clients. We want to make sure we protect them. We're not doing anything that would get them into trouble. So, use it all and then make smart decisions.
Right. I do want to ask you, you are at the center of this debate. Can AI do the creative job?
Yeah, sure.
And like you said, there's a lot of reasons it can't. But what scares you right now?
Sora. I think that deepfakes scare me to death, to be very honest. And I think that the division that we see, in our world, and the way that people can manipulate things is very scary to me, because as a creative person, one of the things that I look for is community, empathy, people that can bring ideas from the entire world, from different perspectives. And so when I see a division and I see that it is available to everyone, basically for free, that makes me very nervous.
And what do you think of this idea that, what did you think of Sora initially when it first came out, and the fact that people are using it?
I mean, listen, when the technology first started arriving and we started seeing that video would be created, I was excited. There's a number of reasons why that's good. Our clients really sometimes have a hard time selling things up to the C-level because the C-suite sometimes doesn't know what a storyboard is. So like getting things out quickly and showing and sharing what something will look like when it moves is good for us because we make better work. It's really the legalities, the attribution, all of that stuff. That stuff is scary, and I think we have to be very careful.
Right. And do you think people care about that stuff less nowadays than they used to? Has the game changed?
I guess the average person, my opinion is that they do care less because they're used to it, right? Going from Instagram to TikTok to now something like a Sora, it's just a natural evolution. I think that you do see backlash from people that are of the creative community because they're concerned not only about, where is this headed, but just protecting, again, sort of the creative quality, making sure things are at the level that they should be. There's a lot of things that we worry about in this industry. And I think a lot of us have been vocal and said, let's be careful about that. Let's protect our clients.
Right. Well, Val, it's a fast-moving space, and I want to thank you for taking the time to chat with us about it. That is Val Carlson, the Chief Creative Officer at Criggle & Max.
My pleasure.
Thanks very much. Well, that does it for today's show. I want to thank you for joining us for this special edition of TITV, and I want to thank Adobe for having us here on the ground. Tomorrow, we've got another special edition of the show. We are on the ground at the Information's WTF, the Women in Technology, Media, and Finance Summit. We are going to be broadcasting from Napa Valley. My colleague, Natasha Mascarenas, has got some great conversations planned for you with guests and with speakers. And on Thursday, we're going to be back to our regularly scheduled programming. A reminder, we are on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. I want to thank you for tuning in, and I want to thank Amazon Web Services, who is our presenting sponsor for this production. Have a great rest of your Tuesday. Bye-bye for now.